Hi everybody, my name is Riley.
Hello, Riley. I don't have a name, but I thought I could start this conversation off with you by having a look at your YouTube description. Now it starts with these words, just a queer girl. Let's have a look at the definition of that word. Queer means strange or odd. Now I think by that definition everyone could be called queer or classified as it, but I can tell you're the sort of person who thinks queer means homosexual, which, in fact, queer was once used as a derogatory term for homosexual people, but then people realised that being a bigot isn't really a good thing and stopped using it, until all the queers came out again and said, call us it, we like it. So if that's what they want, that is what they want. I will insult them with all of the derogatory terms I know.
I'm an activist and a public speaker, and one of the issues I'm most passionate about is rape culture. You may have heard this term before, and it has slightly different definitions depending on who you ask, but I'd say it's a culture in which rape is normalized, excused, or ignored to a high degree by many people, particularly those in positions of power. I would argue that our culture fits this definition, especially at colleges and universities.
You mean to imply that rape is accepted in our society and not considered wrong? Because I think it's considered one of the worst things you could do. Rapists are some of the worst people around. Now, I understand where you're coming from. Not many people come forward when they're raped, so that could lead you to believe that society has no problem with it, when in fact it's just the lack of a victim wanting to come forward. And on your point about schools, it's nonsense.
That does not mean people would say they are okay with rape. It just means that there's a systemic problem with how we deal with sexual assault.
What problem? Is there a systemic problem about how we deal with child molesters and murderers? No? So why is it the same for rapists then?
I realize rape culture has become a highly divisive issue for a lot of people who want to argue about its existence. So whether you want to use the term or not, I thought we could go over some facts and statistics that demonstrate a problem, and then look at how we can solve that problem, regardless of what you want to call it.
Oh, your problem is the high number of assaults. Yes, please show me your facts so I can understand your point of view.
Because the fact is, about 1 in 4 cis women report being sexually assaulted during their 4 years at college. For trans people, that statistic is almost 1 in 3, and for cis men, it's about 1 in 15. And these numbers are probably low for a lot of reasons, including the fact that many survivors feel ashamed of what happened to them, and the fact that we have a cultural taboo around discussing sexual assault. There's clearly a problem here. It's a problem that affects people of all genders, but it appears to disproportionately affect cis women and trans people. These statistics come from the 2015 Association of American Universities study that surveyed 27 schools and over 150,000 students. It was a massive, comprehensive, well-executed study that gave us amazing new data to look at what's going on.
1 in 4 women, 1 in 3 transgender people, and 1 in, what is that? 15 men. And you say those numbers are high. 1 in 15 men. 1 in 15. Yes, the other two are incredibly high. But 1 in 15 men, I don't think is quite high. I think that's the opposite. I think that's probably quite a low statistic.
So those statistics from earlier were about sexual assault, which is an umbrella term that includes actions such as rape, which can be defined as forced penetration.
That's your issue. Rape is not just penetration for 2 reasons. 1, it's because, does that mean if I were to put my finger in your belly button, have I then raped you in some way? Because by your definition, I think I have. And because, 2, does that mean if a woman or anyone else came up to a man and gave him oral sex against his will, does that mean he has not been raped? Because that's not penetrative sex. That's oral sex, as it implies by the name. My definition of rape would be someone who forcibly has sex with someone else without their consent.
If we narrow it down to just completed rape, we find that 14% of cis women, 15% of trans people, and 3% of cis men report being raped at some point during their 4 years at college.
Maybe that's because they don't know what rape is. Maybe that's why 3% of CSI men say that they have been raped. Maybe it's because society has created a taboo that men can't be raped, and that the majority of times when they are, they're told they're not. Ah, no, we wanted it. Which is the most stupid excuse for anything I've ever heard in my life. Now, I have skipped a large portion of the video here because I'm not an American and don't care about IX. In my opinion, it doesn't need to exist, it's just common sense that everyone's treated equally and that rapes are investigated.
They actually do. The pieces of legislation relevant to this are the Clery Act and FERPA. The Clery Act requires every college to report to the federal government every year with the number of how many people were sexually assaulted at their school. You can Google this information for any school, and they are legally required to have it publicly available online. If they don't, write to someone in your administration and ask for it, because you have a right to that information. Now, interpreting these numbers can be tricky. You would think that a low number of reports would be good, because that means people aren't being raped. But that's just not true. Despite what the AAU study found, 1,300 universities reported 0 sexual assaults in 2014. So it's not that rape isn't happening on those campuses, it's just that people aren't reporting it. So a higher number of reports probably means that your school is doing a better job creating a safe environment for folks to report. Of course, schools tend to think that a high number would be bad publicity, and therefore they have little motivation to make students feel comfortable reporting.
You're telling me that a low number of rapes reported is bad and a high number is great? Well, I beg to differ there. Low surely means good. I accept the point that it could be because they're just not reporting them, which is bad. But you probably shouldn't be saying that high numbers of rapes is good. It might make people think a bit differently about you. To summarise, you believe that CSI men aren't being raped because there is a low number of reported rapes than CSI women and transgender people. However, you also believe that a low number of reports is bad because it means that there is a high number of rapes, and a high number of rapes reported is good because it means there's a high number of rapes. When actually, if there's a high number of rapes reported, it means that nothing's been done to stop the rapes, and if there's a low number of rapes reported, it could mean that, or it could just mean that the rapes have been stopped. It's whatever way you look at it. You take a statistic that agrees with you at face value, and one that doesn't, well, you just change it. It's fine. It must be true because this report said so, but then this one here mustn't be true because, you know, common sense dictates that they're not reporting it. This doesn't make sense to me.